One thing we do know is that the Seahawks have the 18th pick in this upcoming draft, and I'm not entirely sure what that looks like yet, Brock. We haven't spent a lot of time focusing on this draft yet, and who better to help us with that than our friend Matt Miller, ESPN draft analyst, who's kind enough to join us right now. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Doing well, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Your time of the season is just about here. We're getting you a little early, but it's just about your time. How ready are you? How up on this year's draft are we at this point?
I feel really good. Every year's different. You know, the whole concept of like the COVID years, NIL, transfer portal has made the job of a draft analyst, like you got to be a lot more organized than you used to be because you're tracking so many guys now. So that's actually what I'm working on today. You know, going through the list of Shrine Game and Senior Bowl players. That's, you know, the two kind of premier postseason college all-star games that get us into the pre-draft season. So going through those lists, making sure I'm up on all the players. So it's a good time to talk prospects.
All right, good. So let me just start here. Is this a good year to have pick number 18?
So yes and no. It depends on what your team needs are. And I know that's like we could spend your whole show talking about this, right? But it's a good year to need defensive ends. It's a good year to need running backs. It's a good year to need corners. It's not a great year if you need a left tackle. It's not a great year if you need a quarterback. It's not a great year if you need a number one wide receiver outside of the first couple of picks. So to have pick number 18, it's a good spot because there are a lot of premier defensive ends. There's some good defensive tackles. There's some depth along the offensive line to where guys could get pushed down to that 18 spot. So it's not a bad spot. I always look at drafts in terms of strength. How many true first-round grades do we hand out? It's normally 16, 17. This year I only have 12. So it's light in terms of blue-chip players, but we all know quarterbacks are going to get overdrafted. That could potentially push down better players to where you guys are at.
Talk to me guard to guard. Daniel Jeremiah was on this show a week ago and said, if you want to fix your O-line situation, we got the dogs.
Dogs are barking.
Yeah, that dog knows. Like these Seahawks need a guard in the center.
Right when we started talking.
Sure.
Yeah, guard for sure.
Yeah. No, he knows. He's barking about the guard and center situation in Seattle. He's saying, fix it, Matt. Fix it. Does this draft have some clay to mold from guard to guard to fix your Seahawk O-line issues?
I think it does. And I think we'll see a lot of guys who are playing tackle in college that are going to get talked about as moving into guard at the next level. Will Campbell from LSU is a great example of this. He's an All-American performer at left tackle for LSU. He might get kicked into guard. Josh Connerly, who's at Oregon, first-round player. There's some talk because he's 6'4", he might get kicked inside to guard as well. So I think that's going to be the bigger conversation, guys, is how many of these tackles in college do we see get moved inside to guard? I will also say this. It is a really strong guard class when you look at round 2. Tyler Booker from Alabama. We got both the guys from Georgia, Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild, both decided to come out. Their center, Jared Wilson, also decided to come out early. All three of those guys could be round 2 to round 3 type picks. So in round 1, guard to guard, probably not, unless someone slips that could be a tackle that moves inside. But I think that's where in rounds 2, 3, even round 4, that's where you're going to find your really good value this year.
So if you are the Seahawks, that's certainly your biggest need is guard, center, guard. I mean, the interior of this offensive line really struggled this year. But you're also saying this is a really strong defensive end class. My guess is Dre Jones isn't going to be back. We'll find out. We don't know yet whether Chenna Nwosu is going to be back. It doesn't feel like either of those two guys will be. So you're looking at Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. If you want to add to that edge rotation, what would be a good fit for Mike McDonald's defense there?
Yeah, this is the year to do it. And I think, you know, the great thing about Mike's defense is you can kind of fit some different bodies in there. If you want to go with that kind of traditional big-bodied pass rusher, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M fits that mold. 6'6", 290 pounds. Now, he's had limited sack production, but just phenomenal traits and somebody that you can mold into that. You know, if you're playing up front, but you need a little bit of burst off the edge, he definitely fits that. I think Jack Sawyer from Ohio State fits that as well. He's a guy who he has gone off in the college football playoffs. He's leading all pass rushers in terms of pressures during the college football playoff. We'll get to see him against a pretty good Texas offensive line on Friday night. Those two definitely stand out for me as guys who feel like Mike McDonald picks. I'll throw one more. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, another 6'6", 275, moves really, really well for that size, though. So, again, if you want kind of the bigger, super-sized defensive ends that were in vogue in Baltimore, I think that's the way you can kind of go.
What do you think of this QB class?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And I liked last year a lot, and I think that's the hard part. It's like we're comparing last year to this year, and it's bleak. Like, I wouldn't take Sheduer Sanders over those 6 guys that were drafted in the first round last year. Cam Ward, you could maybe talk me into Cam Ward without the benefit of hindsight over Michael Penix Jr. because of age and the injuries. Those were the big questions. He's played really well since he got on the field in Atlanta. I think that was a great fit for him. Bo Nix, there was the questions about the age. Was he just a product of his experience? I don't know. Guy looks really good right now. I don't have that same feeling about Cam Ward or Sheduer Sanders right now. I think Jalen Milroe made a mistake leaving Alabama. I would have hit the transfer portal. If I was Jalen Milroe, I'd be on South Beach right now, probably making $6 or $7 million next year to be the quarterback at Miami and try to help yourself like Cam Ward did. Instead, he enters the draft. I don't personally see it with him as a passer. He's got a lot of work that needs done. Quinn Ewers has taken a step back. Carson Beck took a big step back and then hurt his UCL. So it's just, and I know Seahawks fans are going to, we want to talk quarterbacks. I don't know that this is the year. I look at 2026, 2027. Those feel like much better years to need a quarterback.
All right, so 2 questions then on the quarterback spot. One, Jackson Dart's the other name as a mid-round pick, either Dart or Milroe. Yeah. I heard what you said about Milroe. Do you see any value in either of those guys as a 3rd, 4th round pick?
Yeah, I mean, you can make the case for Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart. You can make the case for those guys. I think they're kind of similar. I mean, similar types. Dart throws a much better deep ball. Ewers is better on the intermediate stuff. Here's my thing, though, guys. The mid-round quarterback is gone. There's no such thing anymore. And I think we actually talked about this last year. Mm-hmm. You either go in the first round and you're given time to be a starter, or you go late and you have no expectations of replaced on you. Like the round 3 quarterback that you develop, it doesn't exist anymore. It really doesn't. Even guys like Jalen Hurts, he was an early round 2 pick, and he's kind of an enigma even as far as that round goes. We don't see it happen a whole lot where guys are, mid-round pick, let's give you some time, and oh wait, here they come. Even in the playoffs, like I think 11 out of 12 quarterbacks were first-round picks in the playoffs right now. Jalen Hurts being the only one that wasn't. So it's you either get your guy in the first, or you're kind of stuck in quarterback purgatory. And I feel like Jackson Dart's a fun player. He really is. He's great in that scheme at Ole Miss. That will be my question. I can't wait to see him at the Senior Bowl to say, okay, what do you look like not in that scheme? That helped Bo Nix a lot last year. Maybe Jackson Dart's the dude this year that we get him down there, you get him out of that, Ole Miss one-read offense, and he blossoms, and you say, okay, there's another viable quarterback. But I'm just not a believer in drafting a guy in the 3rd round and saying, all right, we'll develop him. If he was good, he would go earlier, basically.
Well, you talk about quarterback purgatory. What I think you're describing is really quarterback hell when you don't have a quarterback and you're, in the first round and
there's
year
about
after
5
year.
of them, about 5 of those teams this year that need that quarterback.
Right. The other idea is actual quarterback purgatory, which is when you've got a quarterback like I think we have here in Seattle that is good. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Geno Smith's not a good quarterback. He is, and the numbers back it up. But is he going to win you a Super Bowl? And so, the other name that I think will come up here naturally is J.J. McCarthy. If he were in this draft, I'm guessing he would be another one that would be at or near the top of it. What would you be willing to give up if you're a team to get J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, if J.J. were in this draft, he'd be the first overall pick. Even if he, let's say he never did anything else in Michigan, he would be the first overall pick this year. That's where he's at compared to these quarterbacks. So what would you give up? I would give up a first-round pick this year because, again, I think he would be the number 1 overall pick. So if Minnesota's going to run it back with Darnold and give him $41 million under the franchise tag or whatever that looks like, and they say, all right, we lucked into a great situation, we'll move JJ while the value is still high. Yeah, I would think pick 18 all day. Now, I think that they would ask for more than that because, they spent a top 12 pick on him, I think it was. So like they're going to try to get more value than that. So would I spend a first and a second? No, I wouldn't. I think that's, even though he's 21 years old, I was really a big fan of his. I think he's going to be a good player. I just think that's a little bit too much. So if it's a swap of a 1 for JJ, yeah, all day, especially in this draft. But I think they're going to ultimately want more than that.
You said, I think very, definitively and clearly, and Daniel Jeremiah said that same thing to us this year, that mid-round quarterback has disappeared. Why? I mean, we had pretty good success with the 70. Yeah. What was Russ 75th with that third-round pick? Nick Foles right after won a Super Bowl, had a great career, bounced around a few different places. But that wasn't 50 years ago. That wasn't 25 years ago.
I feel like you just answered your own question.
It's a decade ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel bad. I left Russ out of the playoff talk, so he would be the other non-first rounder in the playoffs. I think, Brock, some of it is that guys just aren't – teams feel so much pressure that you have to get it right. And because of that, and because the rookie wage scale, it's more advantageous to draft them early. We can look at Tennessee right now. Once again, they fire a head coach and they fire a general manager because they missed a quarterback, because they thought, hey, we could take this guy at the top of round 2. He'll be our guy. And it hasn't worked out. So I think some of that is –
Wasn't that on the heels of taking – where was Malik Willis? Where'd they take Malik Willis? He was a little bit later.
Willis fell. There was talk that he was going to be a first-round pick, and he wasn't, which is crazy. Malik Willis has looked better in Green Bay this year than Will Levis did. So it's also like, hey, did they get rid of the wrong guy? But, back to your question, I do think it's the rookie wage scale has convinced everyone that you need to win while this guy's cheap. And then you flip the roster-based thing. You're paying a quarterback, and that's when you draft young on defense, the Kansas City model, essentially. Because that, teams are going to swing the bat real big in the first round trying to find that quarterback. And it's caused guys to get elevated. And I do think there's just not a middle class anymore. You're either looked at as you're good enough to be a starter, so you're going to be drafted early, or you have deficiencies and you're going to be drafted late.
Talking to Matt Miller, ESPN draft analyst. I am not a draft analyst, and I don't watch a tremendous amount of college football, so you should take my opinion with an enormous grain of salt. But are you sure Sheduer is not going to be good or not going to be very good? I watched him a couple times this year, mostly because Brock had his games. And every time I watched him, I see a guy who throws a beautiful ball who had no time to throw ever because the offensive line totally stunk. Are you sure he's not going to be pretty good?
He can be pretty good. I mean, if you really like Geno Smith, you're going to really like Sheduer Sanders, because I think that's exactly who he is. He's got a good, not great arm. He's very, very accurate. A lot of touch. I think the difference would be that Sheduer has a little more velocity. Like, he's willing to rip it a little bit more. To your point, their offensive line was incredibly improved this year. He actually had one of the slowest time to throw in all of college football this past year, because he'll stand back there and wait and wait and wait. I worry about a guy he's not big. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. He's not a great athlete. I know his dad is like one of the greatest athletes of all time. He is not. That's not who he is. And somebody who, he's only ever played for his dad. So if you need to bring him in and you need to rip his ass as a rookie and say, this isn't how we do things, and that's common. It happens. How's he going to handle that? And I know his dad coaches hard, but it's different. Those are the things I worry about. So physical tools, he's really, really accurate. He sees the field well, but he doesn't have great physical tools. And he's really been coached by one guy his entire life. And so I think that's going to be the adjustment, and that's going to be the point of, pass or fail for him is going to be how well he responds to that. And it's one of those unknowns that we have about him headed into this year.
Hey, Matt, last thing for me here. I'm going to guess that, and not to answer my own question again, but 6 QBs go in the top 12 last year because these organizations all knew what 2025 was going to bring and how lean it could be. You mentioned 26 and 27 could be positive. What are we looking at in 26 where this changes? Is there a handful of guys already that you're like, oof, if Nico was in this draft or if so-and-so were in this draft, this would be a different animal? You think 26 is that much better than 25?
I do, and I will even say I think Nico might be he might be a 27 guy. Same with Arch Manning. Like, we can even just take them out of the equation for now. Drew Aller would be QB1 in this class. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU would probably be QB1 in this class. I'm really excited about what Lenore Sellers showed at South Carolina. He's somebody who can develop. Cade Klubnik was great for Clemson down the stretch. I mean, he's someone that would be at least in the mix as a top 5 quarterback this year. There's just a lot more, and maybe it's the, glass half full, glass half empty thing, but there's a lot more promise next year. And these guys might all stink next year, and we're talking about them like we are Ewers and Carson Beck and the guys that didn't elevate this year. But I would say where we're at right now, and to your point, teams absolutely are looking ahead. Where we're at right now, even without Arch Manning, without Nico in there, next year at least is a more talented group of players.
One of the other conversations we've had over the last, year has been whether or not you pay DK Metcalf or trade him. And if you were to trade him, part of the argument for that is that there are a lot of wide receivers out there, and it seems like every year that position just replenishes with more and more. You said this isn't a great draft at 18 for wide receiver. If you do trade DK and decide that, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba is going to be your number one, but you still need to, add a little bit more around him, is this a draft where you could do that?
I do think so. I'm also going to take a victory lap on Jackson Smith and Jigba because that was my dude, and I took a lot of hate for liking him as much as I did. So it's great to see how well he's playing. This is a good year, I think, to find those, wide receiver 3 types. I personally wouldn't trade DK yet. I would find something that works, a 2 to 3 year deal. This year, in round 2, there's 2 guys at Texas, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden. They could both go back to school, so that's up in the air. Trey Harris at Ole Miss, really good player. He's been banged up the second half of the season. Sounds like his pre-draft process is going to be slowed a little bit. Oregon's got a couple guys, both smaller, Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson. Tez is a great story. He can absolutely scoot as a receiver. If you wanted kind of the big body opposite JSN, Ayomanor from Stanford is that really, ex-wide receiver that's going to be great at the, breaking routes, things on the intermediate level. So round 2, you could absolutely find, good value at wide receiver. And there's always going to be speed guys that are going to go round 3, round 4 that are going to pop. That's going to happen. That's just the nature of college football these days.
Well, and that might be a fit even if you keep DK. If Tyler Lockett moves on, you're going to need another weapon in the wide receiver room, even if you are trying to run the ball more next year. So, yeah, is this a good opportunity to get a 3rd, 4th round speed wide receiver who pairs with JSN and DK and then also could run back some kicks and punts, something that the Seahawks were terrible at this year?
Yeah, you just described Tez Johnson. Just take Tez. That's your guy. 4.3 speed. He's a little undersized, 5'10", 160, but so is Tank Dell, and he's been a heck of a player for Houston. So I think there are definitely, and there are other guys that would fit that mold. You could go round by round, and we could pick out a player that fits that mold of, hey, this is a good special teams guy that could be a wide receiver 3, or, here's a slot receiver that we could work into this equation. So like Ty Sultan from Maryland would be another fit, round 4, somebody that has that makeup. So that's the beauty right now of how college is being played. There's so many of those speedy guys that have experience playing in space.
Last one for you is just the last position that I do think the Seahawks might want to consider at 18 if they're not going to go guard and they don't like something at that spot. Is there one of those mega threat tight ends this year, somebody who could be a Kittle, Kelsey, that style of player to pair with an AJ Barner?
Oh yeah, Tyler Warren, Penn State. He's I don't know if you got to call any of his games this year. He's amazing. He had a touchdown rushing, receiving, and passing. He does it all. But he's 6'6", 255. But he moves like he's 6'3". He moves like he's a much smaller player. Tyler Warren he's a top 10 player for me. Colston Loveland in Michigan is another really, really good player who just got banged up this year. Michigan they couldn't throw the ball at all. So that affected his numbers. But I watched him at Michigan's Pro Day last year when J.J. McCarthy was throwing to him. And he's special. He could be like a Trey McBride type player in the NFL. He can do it all. He's so talented. So yeah, if either of those guys are there and you don't like, the D linemen that are there, go tight end. Absolutely. They're both going to be stars.
Great stuff, Matt. Love getting the chance to catch up with you a little early this year. Wish that we weren't. I wish we were talking about a playoff game for this coming week, but with that not happening, it's great to get your analysis and just continue good luck. It's been awesome watching all your success at ESPN, and we'll keep relying on you. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
All right, there you go. Matt. The great Matt Miller.